I know nobody really wants me to speak and ramble for the next 20 minutes, so would love to try to make this as interactive as possible. Show of hands, how many of you have used Robinhood? All right. How many of you use an AI agent day to day in your banking, finance? One person, all right. Has anybody used HSBC here? Okay. JP Morgan, Chase? All right. Has anybody used an obscure local bank on top of stablecoin wallets, an FX platform, manual checks, and a separate debit card, all to do one transaction? All right. So the good thing is, most of you have not. The bad thing is, unfortunately, 99% of the world operates that way. I think if you look at fintech and banking in general, it almost seems like they've missed the real economy. And when you think about the real economy, people think, oh, AI startups, high growth, mega cap, A16 backed companies, public companies, et cetera. And fintech was built in San Francisco. If you're in the US, you have to consider yourselves extremely lucky, not just to be in the US, but to have world-class financial infrastructure, to have instant ACH, Stripe built out of the box. You have more options and more rails than you need. For everyone else, it's the complete opposite. And things start breaking, no offense to anybody in Canada, but things start breaking as soon as you go to Canada. And then you go to India, you go to Nigeria, you go to Singapore, and it just gets progressively worse. You look at a manufacturer in Singapore who waits 5 days for a SWIFT payment to clear, and then there's knock-on effects. The manufacturer can't clear their payment. They delay the shipment to their end recipient. And it creates this giant bottleneck in everything. The exporter who's selling coffee in Colombia, in Medellin, they're hedging against a currency that fluctuates 20, 30%. And every day we get to use the US dollar, and that's something they consider a luxury. Even crypto native has not had it that well. How many of you have a crypto foundation or work for a foundation? Again, very lucky. If you worked for a foundation or you ran a crypto foundation, you had a layer 1 or a layer 2. In 2020, 2021, 2023, and 4 and 5, you couldn't bank anywhere. If it was the Cayman Islands, if it was in BVI, Singapore, Switzerland, you had the most obscure kind of patchwork of banks and finance platforms. That was the only way you could actually run your operations. And when we talk about who fintech has been building for, they've been building for AI agents, because the new thing is we don't want to actually touch our money. We want to give it to AI agents that'll do everything day in and day out. They build for the Anthropics of the world. They build for the global companies of the world. And by global, I mean the NASDAQ listed, publicly traded companies. And banks, I spent 9 years between JP and Citi, and we built for the same crowd. We didn't really care about the local manufacturer or the local business or even a middle market business that much. We cared most about the large multi-$100 million deposit holders. And fintech, again, has clustered. Now it's cool to bank crypto native companies, and you see neobanks pop up left and right. If anybody is terminally online, you'll probably see 6 neobanks pop up by the end of next week. And they all target stablecoin native crypto treasuries and crypto companies. But as big as crypto is, it's still infinitely smaller than the regular businesses that proliferate the world. And then we build for startups and enterprises. And again, fintech half served crypto too. When I was at Mercury for 3 years, the week after SVB, no other bank wanted to touch crypto. And my thesis was crypto is very underserved. We should support these companies. And we did. And now it's cool to be in crypto. It's cool to bank crypto. JP Morgan's coming out of the woodworks. You've got every local bank coming out saying, we would love to take on crypto deposits. But even then, they're really going after Solana. And they're really going after companies that have hundreds of millions in their treasury. And the neobanks that are going after crypto, they honestly have never been in banking. They've got compliance teams that don't really exist, and they try to pitch, no compliance is a good thing. But in reality and in banking, it's not. Not having a compliance team is kind of a death sentence. And then all this time, we saw that these banks were building these clustered local rails, and they were making money on FX fees. They were making money on transfer fees left and right, because the large companies could afford it. And then we realized over the last couple of years that the fastest way to move money was actually not to move it at all. It was to have access to a standardized currency, which just happened to be the US dollar, that you could access at any time. But stablecoins may move money movement, but they don't really solve operations for most companies. And I know one of the cliches in crypto is, how do we increase crypto adoption? How do we increase the adoption of stablecoins, of DeFi, of crypto infrastructure? But the problem, again, is we've been building for the same customer base that already has Robinhood. You've already got instant settlement on your trades, and you've got money that shows up on Zelle as soon as you hit send. And we continue to build for those same types of customers. And then we kind of scratch our heads and wonder why adoption isn't going through the roof. And if you look at stablecoin adoption, 90% of it happens overseas. And it never clicked why we never built for complex use cases overseas until you start looking at what the companies are actually building. And you look at what's missing, like if you're sending a payment via stablecoins, do you have an invoice attached? Do you have an ISO memo attached? Is there FX conversion to local currencies? Are you sending money to Nigeria and expecting your recipient to hold it in US dollars indefinitely, which there's an argument to be made for that? Or are you expecting them to figure out an off-ramp or go to somebody who just happens to want USDT? Are you delivering to their local banks? Do you have partnerships at a local bank to be able to offer a first-party account? Are you able to do 30-day payment terms? Are you able to offer credit? Credit, in the US is something we take for granted. We can spin up a credit card, we can get a line of credit. But again, as soon as you leave the US, none of that really exists. Have you guys made any payments using stablecoins for your business? Maybe you're a consultant, you paid somebody overseas. Did you pay them in USDT, USDC? And how did you have to explain to them how to off-ramp, or did they already know? Did it go directly into their bank account, or did it go into the wallet? What was that? Sorry. Oh, so you get exactly what I'm talking about here. Yeah, and thank you, because companies like that are actually trying to, fix the problem. The majority of people think, okay, I'm going to make stablecoin payments. Let me just send money to this, privy or turnkey wallet that this customer has spun up, and they'll just hold it, and they'll get a rain card, and they'll spend, and everything will be fine. And this is what crypto is about. But in reality, these people have to pay rent, these people have to pay bills, these people have to pay for transportation, and all of that happens in their local currency. If you look at a business, which is a complete separation from consumer, the needs just amplify from there. The tire manufacturer in Singapore, they're using HSBC. And they're using HSBC not because HSBC is a world-class product, which if any of you have used HSBC, you know. But they're using HSBC because it's become the default for global banks. They need multi-currency accounts. They need to be able to hold in different currencies at any time, and in live currencies, not static. They need multi-entities. So they have a Singapore entity. They've got an entity in the Cayman Islands, BVI. They've got one in the US. And they need to be able to manage everything in one. they need trade finance, right? So they've got hundreds of millions in receivables and they need to borrow against it. And of course, we have no concept of that because we can go to JP Morgan and say, here are my receivables. Can I just borrow X amount of dollars? And they need local off-ramps. They need real credit and they need real compliance. Not just, we do our KYB and KYC checks and we approve your account, but compliance that actually understands the industries. Compliance that doesn't say, oh, you're in crypto, you're high risk. We are not really just going to bank you, or we'll bank you today and we'll kick you out 6 months later. And it doesn't exist today because we have neobanks that are spinning up without true banking DNA. We have, and they serve a great purpose to make it easy for spenders to spend globally. But that's still a fraction of the global economy. We've got to get neobanks that actually have banking DNA and infrastructure, who understand that stablecoins aren't a replacement for banks, but stablecoins amplify banking infrastructure and fill the gaps. And they don't build a full stack, right? Again, it's really easy to spin up a rain card and allow people to spend stablecoins. It's infinitely harder to offer local bank accounts, multi-currency, hybrid rails, and credit. And if you've built this from scratch today, you essentially have to build from scratch. You've got to form local partnerships. You've got to be super tight with licensed entities in the jurisdictions you want to support. You need to understand invoicing. You need to understand user permissioning. You need to understand that even outside of wallets, there's a whole gate of permissioning that happens for business payments. If you have an owner that decides, I need to send $1 million, they're not just going to give anybody the ability to send $1 million. You're going to have 3 levels of approvals. And that is complex, and that takes time, and that takes an understanding of your user's pain points. And that is truly what we're missing. We're missing the ability for these neobanks that honestly can change global finance to go and really sit down with the customers that maybe aren't as profitable today and maybe have workflows that seem too high cost of capital to solve right now. And so we're going for the crypto KOLs, and we're going for the crypto native folks on Twitter who spend a lot, and that's what they want to offer. What we're building at Flex Global, and this is not a launch product, so if anybody has feedback and if you think my ideas are left field or I'm completely mistaken, I'm happy to take that feedback. But what we're building is we're thinking of stablecoins not as a product. This is not a product that we're expecting to sell. This is not something we're going to go door to door and sell stablecoins as a product or crypto neobank as a product. How we're thinking of stablecoins is to augment the years of banking rails and infrastructure that we've built and the years of credit expertise that we've gotten by servicing 20,000 plus middle market customers. And it's how do you take that winning recipe and you take a phenomenal product, which are stablecoins, and you add that to be able to solve real pain points for global payments for customers who've traditionally been underserved, right? As fintechs build for OpenAI and they build for AI agents and they rebrand as the banks for AI agents, we want to be there to serve the customers that are actually moving. Last year, 100 trillion, or close to $100 trillion in a year. And we're going to be doing this with local currency accounts in 100 plus countries, invoicing, treasury, FX, and credit built in, so actual credit on chain, and stablecoin rails integrated natively, but not the selling feature. You don't have to use stablecoins. They're a point of redundancy and a point to make payments faster. And we're opening up our waitlist, and most importantly, we are talking to a ton of design partners. So if you have any complex workflows, or if you think your products can be additive to ours in any way, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Telegram, Twitter. I'm random bank guy on Twitter. So feel free to connect me there, and I'm always happy to grab a coffee and just chat about what you're building, what we're building, and how we can honestly build a better product that increases adoption for crypto. And hopefully, if I get one message across, it's I hope we don't continue building for people that are already on chain and that already have world-class products. And I hope we start building for people where this kind of product would honestly be a luxury. You know, if you look at somebody in Nigeria and or Argentina, and you offer them just the ability to hold US dollars, to them, that's a luxury. And there's companies that are charging insane on-ramp fees just to get onto US dollar. And so I think as an industry, we should be building for companies that are actually driving the global economy and don't have access to these products. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.